Calaroga Shark Media.
Hello, I'm Johnny Mac with your daily comedy news. Happy Monday. Bill Maher may be a professional comedian, but he acknowledged that Malcolm McDowell is a better comic actor than he is. Maher said, great actors do great with comedy because they play the reality of the situation. If it's written well, that's enough to get the laugh. Maher says of himself, I was just a guy who knew how to get a laugh as a comic does. I could do sitcoms and light comedy. McDowell got it. Maher says, as an actor, Maher was like Seinfeld, noting that the show Seinfeld was brilliantly written, but as for Jerry's acting, he was even worse than me. He'd crack up in his own scenes, and you could see it on his face. McDowell said that's why we loved him. Maher said part of the charm was the guy was like, I'm not even going to pretend to be an actor. They then talked about Gary Shandling, said Gary was a great guy, but added, look, you can only get so close to Shandling. McDowell said, isn't it the same with you, though, Bill Maher? The same with me? Maher said, not me. I let lots of people in as far as you go. Speaking of Seinfeld, Patton Oswalt appeared in the 1994 Seinfeld episode The Couch. He played an employee of the video store where George tries to rent the movie adaptation of Truman Capote's Breakfast at Tiffany's. Oswalt's character, Clerk, informs George that the tape has been rented and refuses George's request to call up the renter and ask them to return it. Patton explains it was his first acting gig ever. Larry David later told him why he was cast on the show. Apparently during his audition, Patton's customer service instincts kicked in. He tells the story, I didn't realize he did this, but I subconsciously started looking around for what other employee can I pass this guy on to, because I'd worked in retail for so many years. And that's what you do when you have a bad customer. You say, who do I give this guy to? And Larry David thought, oh, I love that. He didn't get rich off his Seinfeld. He says it got me my after membership, but then the money I made went right into paying my after fees. It had no impact financially or fame-wise. The Montreal Gazette spoke to Dane Cook. A lot of people from the Dane Cook generation have gotten out of comedy. I know a lot of people who were new when I started at SiriusXM are no longer doing it. It's so weird to me. Dane says, don't ever believe a comedian who says they're leaving because they want to. I don't believe any comic is ever happy about putting down their mic. I think there's something about a comedian always wanting to observe and report and to lash out and say the thing that everyone else is scared to say. I always want to see a comedian keep that spike in their hands. That's what I want to continue doing for the next phase of my comedy career. Comedy has gotten easier in the last year or two, especially in the States. Comedy went around the corner from utter cancellation for saying something supposedly out of bounds to audiences deciding they don't want homogenized crap anymore. They want a little danger. I actually think we're in a comedy resurgence now. I'm hearing comics saying anything and everything and pushing the limits a little bit more. It's not about trying to break the law. It's about bringing that little dang. Boy, I hope we get the Danaissance here. I'm looking forward to it. Pete Correale, friend of mine, he spoke to the Digital Colonel. No, there's no Digital Kernel. Again, sometimes I just choose not to make the edit. What would the Digital Kernel be? It's the digital journal to which Pete Correale had advice for aspiring young comics and said, I do have a half-assed Pete Correale, but I don't feel like doing it. Basically, you have to get down and say, man, like, hey, what's up, man? Pete said, you have to have such an incredible passion to do this. If you don't love doing it, don't look for success. The commitment's through the roof and the rejection is heavy. The people that have made it, including myself, cannot see a life without doing it. If you don't feel that way about it, do something else. It's a calling. Also, talk about your life because nobody else can steal that. Don't curse because it handcuffs you, even though I curse all the time. And then Pete laughed at that. He does curse all the time. Sebastian Maniscalco, he does a podcast with the aforementioned Pete Correale. He's on a 47-city tour called It Ain't Right, and he's added bells and whistles for arena crowds. Sebastian says, I've always liked being a showman. I grew up with lots of bells and whistles when it came to going shows like Motley Crue, Prince, or Michael Jackson, so I always loved the spectacle of it all. Although this is not music, I not only wanted to give the people a night of laughter, but something to look at. Let's go at Kotska down in Australia. The Sydney Morning Herald caught up with her. They write she's known for a lot of things. In appearance, her ink black razor-sharp bowl cut perfected in 2017 is a throwback to the hairstyle she had as a child in Japan. When she performs live, fans often turn up wearing bowl-cut tribute wigs. She says, comedy really is a cult. And then says, I'm just kidding. The Sydney Morning Herald was curious, is it a wig? She says, no, I'm embracing the weirdo. That's what's happening. My main motivation in performing and doing comedy is for people to not feel alone anymore. A big part of it is to talk about things that are hard to talk about, like mental illness. It's also about making people laugh a lot. I was a very quiet kid. I was very shy for the most part, but I was learning at home the way people communicate. Comedically, it was very animated. I didn't dare try that at school, though. At school, you're supposed to be cool. It wasn't until years later, after I'd been practicing in the comfort and privacy of my home, that I finally came out and tried to be funny. At age 17, a fellow churchgoer gave her a DVD copy of Margaret Cho's 2002 comedy special, Margaret Cho, Notorious Cho. Osco said, "I'd never heard of stand-up comedy. I had no idea it was even a job." In college, a boyfriend suggested she try it. She did some open mics, eventually got an HBO comedy special. She says, when you're trying to find your voice, you're trying to figure out who you are, you should go for the thing that you've been trying to run away from the most, because it's possible you're in denial of who you really are. I was afraid to wear bright colors and stand out and rock this haircut that I think is actually very artful and chic and I love, but as a kid, you're made fun of for it. So now I'm finally embracing all the things that made me feel like fake or an outsider, the things that actually make me feel good. It was during the pandemic I really embraced this haircut, my brand of comedy, the way I joke, and finally talking about my mom's mental illness. It took the world to shut down and being forced to look inward. I'm not academic. I'm not organized. I'm very unapologetically someone who makes mistakes, and I have to fail to learn. Check out her special. She is fantastic. She's one of my favorites. I like her a lot. Her new show, Full Grown, is about figuring out what being an adult is, Zotsko says. It's sillier and funnier than The Intruder because it's exploring an even deeper side of me. It's talking about how you make friends as an adult. It's about me and my husband and my abilities as a human person. It's about realizing that maybe you'll never be fully grown. The more people talk, the more stories are out there, the more people feel seen. It's finding your community. We're all not normal. My fans are fellow weirdos, and I love them. Deadline asked Sam Morril, unlike many comics, you've had the backing of major distributors for most of your specials, first with Comedy Central, now Netflix and Amazon. Sam said, God bless Comedy Central for having interest in me, but I may as well have flushed my special down the toilet with how many people saw it. You do feel pretty discouraged when you work that hard in your first hour and it's like nowhere. People couldn't even watch it. That drove me crazy. The first half hour I thought was really good, so I thought it was about time in my mind. I wasn't like, wow, they gave out a bunch and I thought I should have gotten one. Then for the second hour, I only got it because Amy Schumer produced it. I don't think they would have given me an hour otherwise, and same goes for Mark Normand. I don't think they were particularly interested in us until we had that. Then the next one I put on their YouTube, so I don't feel like I had their support. As for Netflix, I was pretty damn late on Netflix too. I don't think I was on any of them early. With Amazon, they actually gave me a respectable money offer, and for me, I had made enough specials on a budget. I was like, I want this to look awesome. These things live forever, and I put so much work into them. I want the set design and the crew to really reflect that, and I thought they did a great job. Deadline followed up asking about the difference between that kind of thing and YouTube. Sam said, I couldn't spend what I spent on this on YouTube. It would have been too much money. My YouTube one is very minimalist and simplistic, and I think it works for it. But also, I think now YouTube is oversaturated. Boy, we're hearing a lot of that lately, right? I think I mentioned a story like that yesterday and maybe one last week too. Sam says, I think YouTube is oversaturated. I think there's always going to be problems. Joe List got demonetized on YouTube. Really? Why? Joe List? So did Fahim Anwar. I mean, it's pretty effed up that social media platforms have this playbook that they keep changing. I can't say, I believe he's saying the C word here. I can't say the C word? Question mark from Johnny Mac. I'm not saying I want to, but I'm writing for the algorithm. You're now policing language, and I think it's really dangerous for comedy and comedy specials. That upsets me. That's the way we're going with social media. They're policing more and more language because that's where the ad sale dollars are, and before you know it, it's going to be worse than bleeping Fallon. Wow, a dig at Jimmy Fallon. The Toronto Guardian spoke to comedian Mo Sitta. Mo, how would you describe your comedy style? Mo said fierce, brave, smart, philosophical, intelligent, and human. My bad, no, I'm still very much a newborn baby when it comes to all this, but if I had to describe my style right now, I'd say I try to be relatable, very personal for the most part, and happy vibes. I might start getting goofier and more confusing as the years go by. I feel it coming. You never know, though. I never want to force anything. Who are your influences? He says Kevin Hart, Dave Chappelle, Shane Gillis, and maybe even Chris D'Elia. Be careful on that last one there. Don't get too influenced. Google it. Who's your favorite comedian growing up? Kevin Hart was the one who got me into this. If Kevin Hart does not exist, then I don't know if I'd be here right now. I also love Dave Chappelle and Bill Burr pretty early on. Who's your favorite comedian now? Dave Chappelle, Kevin Hart, Louis C.K., Tony Roberts, Sebastian Maniscalco. Those are my top 5 personal favorites of all time in that order. Okay, let's read it again. Chappelle, Hart, C.K., Tony Roberts, Sebastian. But I love so many comedians. Joe List, in my opinion, is the best comedian on earth at this moment. Really? Joe List. A lot of Joe List mentions today. He was demonetized, I heard. And that's your comedy news for today. If you enjoy the program, tell a friend about it. They might like it too. If you would like this program without commercials, $4.99, calaroga.com/plus. All the commercials go away. Details in the show notes. See you tomorrow.